Thank you all very much for having me out today. I'm going to tweak the computer really fast, and then we'll get going. All right, so, like you said, I'm Chase. I'm a doctor of chiropractic and a quantum neurologist. I'm also an applied clinical nutritionist. So essentially what I do in my practice is I look at people structurally, neurologically, and nutritionally to try and help them get to the level of health that they deserve. And that's different for everybody. And I don't want to sit here today and just talk with you about how sick we are as a nation and what y'all should be doing or could be doing to try and change that. Because you guys probably didn't come today to hear a health talk and why you should come to my office. The thing you probably came to hear today is what you can do to grow your business. How you can meet other people, how you can grow a network, and how you can become more of an entrepreneur, or how you can achieve the goals in wealth that you're looking for. So that's what we're going to talk more about today, and then how health and how food addresses those things. So I have a little plan for you guys. If I were to show you this right here and tell you that this represents 3, but that this one right here represents 4, what would y'all say that this one represents?
A whole bunch.
8. 9.
8.
So I'm hearing different answers. I'm hearing 1, I'm hearing 8, I'm hearing a whole bunch.
2.
Oh, and you said 1, correct? Why would you say 1?
Number of intersections.
Number of intersections. So let's look at this again.
Oh.
This one here represents 3.
3 or
This one here represents 4. And this one here represents how many?
1.
I'm going to say, I'm sorry, you're wrong.
Oh,
That was a good thought, Owen. That was a good thought because the number of intersections definitely has a play. What was another answer? Someone else said 8. You told me 8. Why do you think 8, Brad?
8 sections.
8 sections? Or 8
lines.
points, maybe? 8 little lines? And I would say it's a great thought, but sorry, that's also wrong.
It's actually 4 lines.
It is 4 lines, but if this represents 4 here, how is it possible that this one here represents 4 also?
I think it represents 2 because there's a dark line down the middle.
You want to know the answer?
Yeah.
The answer is the pictures mean absolutely nothing. My fingers were telling y'all what it meant. This represents 3. I'm sorry. This represents 3. This represents 4. And this represents how many?
5.
5. See, we often get distracted by things that we see, and we don't look outside the box. And in medicine, that happens every single day with every patient that walks into a doctor's office. In our business, it happens the same way. We get so pigeonholed into a certain thing that we stop seeing what we're trying to achieve. We stop seeing what's really there in front of us. In medicine, I look at people in a different way. I'm a chiropractor. People have back pain all the time. I crack their back gets better, life goes on. But I do so much more than that from a nutritional and a neurological and a health standpoint. So how does that apply in business for you guys? Tony Robbins, Tom Hopkins, Jack Canfield, all these people talk about the self-help and developmental ways that we can improve our sales, our communication, or whatever it takes us to be a better business person. And every single one of them talks about you should take care of yourself from a health standpoint as well. If you don't have the energy to get up in the morning to go out and be a business person, your business is going to suffer for it. If you don't have the energy to be pain-free and function like you should or could, then your business will suffer for it. But so much more suffers as well. Your family relationships, your ability to donate your time, your money, your efforts to other organizations, whether it's the Boy Scouts, whether it's your church, whether it's the veterans, whatever it might be, we only have a certain capacity within us to perform. And if that capacity becomes diminished, for whatever reason, we don't perform at the level we want to. So the only reason I go through that little activity there is because it gives us a chance to look at the body a little bit different today, rather than just, hey, guess what? You have high blood pressure, let's lower your blood pressure with the medication. Or, hey, you're overweight, go starve yourself and exercise on a treadmill every day and lose your weight. Or whatever it might be. Let's look at our body like a machine that is used for production, whether it's business production or social production or family relationships or whatever, and what can we do to try and change or tweak that ourselves. And that's what we're going to go into a little bit today. So, oftentimes we look at health in certain ways. We see things like scales or devices and we think of them as scary things. That doesn't have to be the case. A scale is nothing more than a tool. When you go to the auto mechanic and he checks the tire pressure, you don't have to cry that your tires are low. It's just a tool that gives you an assessment that says this is where you stand at this time. Scales do that, blood tests do that, body fat percentages, sometimes just the mirror, can be this tool that we use to try and get the motivation to move and change things. Oftentimes when I introduce myself and I tell people I'm a chiropractor, they say, oh, you're a chiropractor, I've got this neck pain here, I've got this back pain here. You must do amazing massages. And I just look, I'm like, yeah, whatever. Because that's the misconception of whenever we pigeonhole ourselves into a certain industry. When you say you're a realtor and everybody goes, oh yeah, I know exactly what you do, they probably don't. Or when you say I'm a financial advisor, nobody truly knows the ins and outs of what you do. When it comes to medicine and health, I use tools and instruments to help me get an idea as to what's going on with people so we can get them to where they need to be, wherever it might be. Whether it's a professional athlete trying to save strokes on his golf game that comes in and sees me every time he gets a new pair of clubs or a new pair of cleats, or a student that's trying to do better in school because they're having headaches and pain and they can't focus like they're supposed to, or a mom who wants to be a better mom and have babies and can't do it because she's not in a position health-wise to be able to do that. That's where we can take tools like scales and try and get them where they need to be, or blood pressure or labs or whatever we might go from there. We know that weight is a major issue in the United States. There's a lot of people that are overweight, and that's due to a variety of different things. But once our weight starts changing, our physiology has to adapt and try to compensate. When we gain in weight, our blood pressure is more likely to go up, our weight's more likely to maintain its overweight nature, we're more likely to have diabetes, we're more likely to have high cholesterol, we're more likely to have pain, we're more likely to not work like our brain is supposed to work. We have a bunch of issues because of it. One of the first things someone can do to try and improve their business is start managing how they are physically in appearance, because if their weight changes, there's a better opportunity for their brain, their body, and other systems inside of them to start changing as well. When you look at something like diabetes, which is often associated with weight gain, they're estimating that diabetes will double by 2050. By 2050, they're estimating that 1 out of every 3 people will have diabetes. That's adult onset diabetes. That's a problem. Because diabetes type 1.5 or diabetes type 3 is basically dementia and Alzheimer's. So imagine you're a business person and in 2050 you have diabetes, and yeah, you're having your legs cut off because you have no circulation, or you're numb and tingly, or you're overweight, or whatever. The part that follows from a diabetic standpoint is inflammation of the brain, neurotoxicity, degeneration, inability to perform and function in society, because dementia and Alzheimer's sets in. What we do on a daily basis from a food standpoint has dramatic effects on what our body's capable of performing with. So when we become overweight, when we have blood sugar levels that go crazy, when we develop conditions like diabetes or dementia or Alzheimer's that are potentially preventable in most cases, then it affects our business production as well. And I'm not saying all diabetes are preventable. There's some autoimmune conditions of diabetes, and there's some autoimmune conditions of dementia and Alzheimer's. But when we can't put the sugar stuff down, it affects our performance, and it leads to our performance in business and family and health. So these are just some quick slides I'll show you real quick. It shows you what sugar does inside of our body every time we eat something. So one Cinnabon has about that much sugar in it. There's some sorbet, which is the healthy stuff, because it's not the ice cream, right? It has a lot of sugar inside of it. That's what a Coke looks like. And that's how many carrots you'd have to eat to make one Coke from a sugar standpoint. It's a lot of stuff. So when we are over consuming sugary type things, weight's a problem, brain function's a problem, blood sugar management becomes a problem, and it in turn leads to increases in pain, increases in cardiovascular incidences, and other issues like that. So one of the first things that we could do as a society, or as business people that want to perform better in society with our businesses, is start limiting or changing the sugary consumption of foods that we do on a daily basis. And it doesn't always have to be in the form of Cokes or candies. Sometimes the foods are the pastas, which turn into sugars within us as well, or the breads, or whatever it might be. I always encourage my patients to start tracking their food when they first come into the office. So day one, patients will start, they're encouraged to download an app, and I would encourage all of you to try this experiment for a week. The app is called MyFitnessPal. Most girls in here probably have it already on their phones. Most guys have seen it. It's on your wife's phone. It's an app that you can track everything you eat and all your exercise and stuff like that, and it tells you how many calories, how many whatever you eat. Ignore all of that. Track your foods, and then go to the pie chart section that shows you what you're doing on a daily basis from a fats, a carbohydrates, and a protein standpoint. And just do it for a week and look and see what your normal everyday diet is doing to you. Most of the time when patients come in, I encourage them to eat less than 20% of their diet from carbohydrates, about 20% or so of their diet from proteins, and about 60% of their diet from fats. And everybody freaks out when I tell them that, because they're like, wait a second, I'm coming to you to try and lose weight and try and have my brain function better and try and get my heart and my blood pressure to go down. Why are you telling me to eat more fats? And that's because a long time ago, we didn't have the overabundance of sugars that we have today. Think back to pre-Walmart, pre-fast food, 1850 and earlier. People didn't have avocados growing all the time. They probably had more access to avocados than others. They didn't have something like a pineapple in Texas in December. Let's call it that. So you couldn't go to H-E-B, grab a pineapple, chop it up on December for Christmas, and be fine with it. They had foods that were available to them based off of their location, based off their environment, and based off the season that they were grown in. During the wintry times, for example, sugary things are of a much lower availability from a nature standpoint. During the summer, when the days are longer and people are working more and they're doing more stuff, sugar consumption would have gone up because that's where the fruits are more likely to be present. But they would eat vegetables, they'd eat meats, they'd eat real food, and they wouldn't be packaged and have a shelf life for 6 months like half the stuff is that we have available to us today. So if we can change the way we're eating and go back to a whole foods-based system and a non-packaged food system and track what we're doing, we often can see simple changes like weight going down, blood pressure going down, cardiovascular risk going down, diabetes going down, things like that, blood sugar management improving, and things like that. It just so happens that I have some blood tests here that I'm going to go over in just a second. But a patient that came to the office the other day had triglycerides of over 500. And that's high, just so you know. Triglycerides should be less than 150 on the blood test, and hers were over 500. And she's a short little Italian lady that came in, and she's like, well, I eat pasta, I eat cheese, I live my life, but I'm all of a sudden scared that I'm going to die from a heart attack, because my doctor said if I don't change something, there are going to be issues. Her total cholesterol was about 276, I believe. Normal is less than 200, and she wanted to change some things. So I asked her to track her foods and be very strict and religious about it. I told her, as if your eternal salvation depends on this, I need you to track your foods and bring it to me again next week. And she started doing that. And her food, basically her proteins were about 20%, her carbs were about 20%, her fats were over 60%. Every day for that week. And she came back in and she had lost 12 pounds in the process. She's like, I don't know what this is because I feel like I'm killing myself eating eggs and stuff like that for breakfast, but I'm doing exactly like you asked me to, and I've already lost 12 pounds in this first week. Now, we haven't run her blood test yet. I assume, because of other lab tests that I've seen and patients that we do this with, she will probably have a pretty significant drop in triglycerides. Her cholesterol will probably be moving in the right direction. And as long as she continues going down that path of eating real food, there are going to be some changes for her. So, the only way we would know, though, is through experimentation. Because nobody knows. God doesn't tell every person here how to eat. Because someone that grew up in Alaska is going to eat very different than someone who grows up in Hawaii and someone who grew up in Puerto Rico. From an ancestral standpoint, pre-fast food, pre-Walmart, they would have had a very different lifestyle and a very different eating habit. So therefore, we do our best to try and mimic those lifestyles from a dietary standpoint. Now, I would encourage all of you guys to try that out and see how it works. MyFitnessPal is the app. 60, 20, 20 are your goals. So this is another lady that just happened to come to the office. This person, when she came in, she was, because she's since retired, but she was a teacher at Cy-Fair School District. She taught the English teachers how to be English teachers. So she worked for the district, not in the schools. And her job was to go out and make sure that English teachers became effective teachers and did what they wanted to and whatnot. When she came in to see me, she was overweight. She had something called fibromyalgia and always experienced pain. She was very tired. She couldn't put sentences together and cognitive function was on the decline. She basically stopped going to church because every time she would go to church, people would say hi to her and give her a hug. And it hurt too bad for her to be exposed to someone touching her that she said, I'm just not doing it anymore. Her grandkids would come over and want to get in the lap and read with grandma. And she would push them off and say, you go sit on the floor somewhere and I'll read you this way because it hurts too bad to be the person I am right now. She wanted to retire. She hated work. She hated going to do the things that she wanted to do because she felt like she could not perform in the way that she wanted to because of the way her body was feeling on the inside. So we tried some stuff. We had to get off of some certain foods that tend to create inflammation in the body, foods that tend to create pain, and we tweaked her diet up. She started eating more fruits and vegetables in her life. She got off of packaged food. She stopped doing Diet Cokes. There you go. There you are. She started doing Diet Coke. She started doing all those things. And in doing so, over the course of 8 months, 10 months, she ended up losing 80 pounds. She stayed working in her job for another year and a half or 2 years. She started to enjoy it again. Her brain function started improving. And I remember one day she comes into the office for a follow-up appointment, and she starts crying before she even gets a word out, because eventually she tells me the story how the night before, her grandkids and her went roller skating. And she roller skated with her grandkids for the first time ever. Now what's interesting about this person is back in the 80s, she was a competitive roller skater person. So she had all these pictures and medals and things, kind of like ice skating, but on 4 wheels that are in line. Y'all might know it. I never had seen this before. She was a competitive roller skating person, and she had all these pictures and all these stories, but had never been able to show her grandkids how to do that. But she was able to this time. And so, after she told me that story, we took a picture of her again, and that's what she looked like at that time. And that was over the course of 8 to 10 months. I mean, this took time. It wasn't to give you a pill, and then tomorrow you don't have fibromyalgia, and you can go roller skating, and you can, fit in a swimsuit again. This was her taking the time to change health from the inside, and it changed her performance in all levels. She was a better person at the school district. She was a better grandparent because she was able to hang out with the kids. She started going back to church again. She's since retired, and now she just spends so much time doing other stuff. She said that retirement was the worst thing she could have done for a time management standpoint. She thought she was going to be sitting around popping bonbons and watching TV, but now she's just volunteering and doing everything she wants to do. Completely different person, because she chose to change herself from the inside. And she was able to perform better because of it in a bunch of different areas. Talked about one person with some pretty bad blood work. This is another one. Now, for those of you that are not medical doctors, when it says out of range, that means it's not good. When it says in range, that means it's better than what it could be. Okay? Doesn't necessarily mean great, it just means it's decent. So once again, we have these normals. So triglycerides normally should be less than 200. His are, well, I'm sorry, I said 150 earlier. These are old blood tests. You'll see the dates from 2000. A long time ago, blood records used to be normal triglycerides were under 200. Now they've dropped the level to where normal is now under 150. So that's the discrepancy there if you see it. So his triglycerides 477, his total cholesterol is 256, his LDL cholesterol 31, his HDL cholesterol is 31, his LDL cholesterol, as noted in the highlighted area, says could not be calculated because you are too jacked up. That's paraphrasing what it says there. So in this particular person, he goes to the doctor because he's having chest pain. He's at the tipping point for cardiovascular incident. He runs his own business. He's a father of 4. He volunteers at the church. He does all kinds of fun stuff. Now all of a sudden he's having chest pain. He goes to the doctor runs some blood work and says, you need to slow your roll because you got some problems. You need to stop everything, change something, because you're about to have a heart attack. So he did. Now the reason this person is important is because it's my dad. So in 2000 I was not his doctor, I was just his son. And in 2000 he had a scare of his life, and he said, you may not be able to see your son graduate, or sons graduate from high school, because I graduated in 2000. My brother graduated in 2002. You may not be able to see them get married and see your grandkids, etc. So he was scared at that time. So he went to the doctor. They told him that we're going to do X, Y, and Z procedure and put you on X, Y, and Z medication. And if you don't change some stuff soon, we're just going to go in and do bypass. And he didn't really want to do that yet because he's at the age of 50-something at this time, nervous about it. So he goes and tries some other things. He goes to this other alternative doctor in Las Vegas, who basically has him eat just like I asked you guys to eat before. 60% of your diet fat, 20% of your diet carbohydrates, 20% of your diet protein. Don't put anything in your body that fizzles or pops that you get out of the machine. Because as an air conditioning repairman that goes in 120-degree attics all over Houston, as someone who's traveling on the road all the time, he had to make some dramatic lifestyle changes. Well, he did that. And you'll notice the date here is November 13th. By December the 9th of the same year, his triglycerides are now at 159. His total cholesterol is now at 165. His good cholesterol is 29. His bad cholesterol can now be read at 104. Those were the differences, basically, between those less than 30 days. By changing the inside first, not looking for surgical interventions, not looking for medication, but changing how he ate. In turn, he lost weight. His cardiovascular risk factors went down. He's still alive today. things like that were able to be changed because he took initiative and changed stuff on the inside, in turn changing his performance. And that's essentially what we're looking for. Yeah, it's cool to see some cholesterol numbers change, but who cares about cholesterol if you don't exist anymore? Okay? This person's alive and can be my father today and see my grandkids and see me get married and see me do all the things that I wanted to do, that he wanted to see me do, because he changed and his performance also changed. Now, he still runs his business. He still fixes air conditioners all over Houston. He's still up in 130 and 40 degree attics at the age of, I don't know, 60 something, 65 right now. He's still doing those things because he enjoys it. But now he can because he's changed some stuff. So I mentioned before that blood tests sometimes matter when they're in the out of range area, and sometimes they matter even more when they're in the in range area. See, a lot of times we have these symptoms, whether it's brain fog or inability to lose weight or whatever it might be, and we go to the doctor. The doctor runs these blood tests and says, guess what, you're perfectly normal. And you say, if I was normal, I wouldn't be here, buddy. Right? And so sometimes labs don't give us the full picture. It was easy on the last guy because his blood numbers were all highlighted in the out of range area. But sometimes we have to look at labs from a functional standpoint. So when looking at blood tests, this is blood test 101 for everybody who's not a doctor in the room. You have the dotted lines on the inside, that's the normal range. The red stuff on the outside is where they flag it high, put it in bold, and stick it in a different column so everybody in the room can know that it's out of place. Right? That's what it looked like here. So, in range would be within the dotted lines, the out of range is highlighted to the off to the side. In medicine, we look at values based off of statistical averages. Nobody here knows what God wants our thyroid hormone to be, I guarantee it. But if we test enough people and start putting them on bell curves and determining averages and statistics, we can determine what we think normal should be. But what's to say normal for Brad isn't normal for Roy, or normal for Chase, or normal for anybody else in the room? So therefore, many times individuals can feel symptomatic, go to the doctor, and be told, you're normal, by everything that we have diagnostically speaking. And the patient says, I don't feel normal. I can't think, I can't move, my hair falls out, I can't lose weight, I'm stumbling for words, whatever, I'm trying to give sales presentations or whatever it might be, but yet everything comes back normal. So some researchers have put together what they call functional or optimal ranges. Basically, they take those statistical averages, but they ran them on a bunch of healthy individuals rather than individuals that had symptoms and went to the doctor. And they started compiling different statistical analysis in that way, and they said maybe we can start comparing people to the asymptomatic portion rather than comparing them to the symptomatic portion of the population and see what changes from there. So here's an example of some blood work. And I'm sorry, it's hard to take an 8.5 by 11 and put it on a PowerPoint slide, so they're kind of stretched and weird. You'll see the reference range. This is what is considered normal, which means anything that's bolded and highlighted to the side, either above or below that, will get you a flag as needing a medication or needing a surgical procedure or needing something because you're probably jacked up. And then you'd see that everything within there should be fine. So the very top value is TSH. For those of you that have never had a TSH performed, it's a thyroid stimulating hormone. It's a commonly run test or evaluation for people with thyroid problems. TSH, first value is 2.57, falls right within the normal range. Your doctor would say you're a normal person, have fun. The next person, TSH of 23.52. The doctor and every person that's ever been to the doctor's office would look at that and say, whoa, what's up? This is one of the patients here in my office. I'll show you the rest of her blood work in a second. But this right here would say, guess what? You've probably got a hypothyroid issue. You're probably having your hair fall out. You're probably having difficulty getting pregnant. You're probably overweight. You're probably always cold. You probably don't think very well. And you're always forgetting things. And you put your keys down and you walk in the room and then you don't know where your kids are and then you lost your keys. And, you can't find your car when you park at the mall. That type of thing. And you probably have stuff like that going on. Okay? And then you have this last person here who says they're normal also. The interesting thing about all of that is when you go back to your functional ranges like this, we have the very last person here. This last person came into my office. She was 25 years old at the time. Her hair was falling out in handfuls. She'd shower in the morning and she'd just it would just fall out all over the place. She was always cold. But if you looked at her and you saw her walking down the mall, I guarantee you she'd turn every head in here. Girls and guys both. You'd be like, she's a good looking girl. What's going on with her? And yet she comes in the office, she's tired all the time, she's sleeping 16 hours a day. Her hair's falling out like crazy. She's bruising like crazy. She has no willpower and energy to get up and be alive. And how many of you at 24 years old can picture somebody like that? That's not what we would recommend, and it's not the norm for most people, and it shouldn't be. So this person goes to her endocrinologist, and that's the result of her blood test, 4.2 on her TSH. And her doctor says, you're normal. You don't have any thyroid issues, you're fine. So she comes to our office, and we asked her to go back to her endocrinologist and run a test. That test that we asked her to run was called a thyroid peroxidase antibody. A thyroid peroxidase antibody is a number that tells us that the body is having an autoimmune issue. So this person walked into the office, she walked like a duck, she talked like a duck, and swam like a duck, but she was told she's not a duck. Because she had all these thyroid issues, but her thyroid numbers were normal. We asked for an additional test. That thyroid peroxidase antibody basically says that the immune system is eating the thyroid gland like it's Pac-Man chowing down on the little ghosts. And her thyroid was showing all kinds of thyroid symptoms, but yet technically producing the right amount of hormones. So in this particular person, you'll notice that the normal value is less than 34. And her value is?
Over 2,000.
Slightly higher than that. So when the OBGYN got this test back, her jaw hit the floor and she goes, I don't even know what to do to you. I've never run this test before. Go take this to your chiropractor that told me to run this and tell him to do whatever he wants to do with you, because I have no idea what to do. So that particular person comes back into the office with this huge thyroid number of autoimmunity, not thyroid disease or thyroid problems, and then says, now what? Well, guess what we did? We got her off of inflammatory foods. That was the first thing we did. In fact, if any of you guys are just dying to know what the most common inflammatory food is, it's wheat. So wheat. This person, I said, don't eat wheat, barley, or rye for the next 30 days and see what happens. And wheat has molecules inside of it that can mess with the immune system. And yeah, Oprah Winfrey talks about going gluten-free, and certain celebrities talk about it. And for some people, yeah, it might be a trend thing. But for people that have autoimmune Hashimoto's thyroiditis, that's basically celiac disease of your thyroid. So wheat jacks these people up. So this person got off of wheat and barley and rye because they contain gluten. And within 30 days, her hair is not falling out anymore. Her energy is improved. Her bowels function again. She's having energy. She's not sleeping 16 hours a day. She's back to almost a normal person. But it came from looking at the body different and not accepting the fact that someone with a normal TSH is normal if they still have problems. And so it takes self-evaluation from each one of us to try and determine where do we rate in that standpoint. Some of us, yeah, maybe we are normal. We don't have pain. We don't have headaches. We don't have sleep problems. We have good digestion, whatever. Then great, keep doing whatever you're doing. It doesn't matter. But if we've got issues and we're told we're normal, but yet we don't feel it, maybe it's worth pursuing more. Because that person's life was affected by it. She couldn't be the girlfriend she wanted to. She couldn't be the personal trainer she wanted to. Because she's sitting here telling everybody how to do stuff, and yet she goes home and just crashes forever. And it just doesn't feel good, even though her life is in fitness and in health. So we had the opportunity to change it. The last story I want to tell you about is this person right here. This isn't the actual ultrasound she texted me, but I couldn't figure out how to get my text message onto my email. in the 15 minutes I had before I came over here. So, person comes to see me about 3 months ago, and she's got something known as a prolactinoma. Anybody ever heard of a prolactinoma before? Prolactinoma is a benign tumor that sits in your pituitary gland and shoots out prolactin. Has anybody ever heard of the hormone prolactin? Okay, some of us. Prolactin is a hormone in your body that you get when you're pregnant. So, it's neat because if you get pregnant, your body turns off the switches and says, guess what, you can't get pregnant for a while because I've got other stuff going on right now. So then eventually you have this baby, and then you nurse, and your body, every time you nurse, shoots out this hormone called prolactin so that you don't have babies every 10 months from each other. It's this physiologic process where your body gives you a little break as you're weaning this baby and trying to make them bigger. Then you can go on to the next stage of your life, which is having another baby again, should you choose to. Well, this person wanted to get pregnant, and she has prolactinoma. Her body thinks she's permanently pregnant, pretty much. So 4 years ago, when she wanted to have her first kid, she went to her, some doctor, some specialist. I don't think it was an oncologist because they're not considered cancerous tumors. So she went to some doctor, probably her OBGYN. Her doctor then said, guess what, you got this prolactinoma, we've run your blood test, your prolactin levels are through the roof, we're going to put you on this medication, it will suppress prolactin production in your body, and you will conceive a child. And she did that, and she gained 80 pounds before conception. because this medication changed a bunch of her hormones. Her body was trying to do something, and it was throwing prolactin up. She gained 80 pounds. She ended up getting pregnant. She could never lose the weight back again. And she said, I never want to take that medication if possible, but I still want to have children. Is it possible for you to come help me? I don't know. I've never seen someone with prolactin in my life. But come on in. Let's see what we can do for you. Because we're going to just try and evaluate you and see what we find. We changed her diet up. We took her off of some inflammatory food. We supplemented her with some herbs and things to try and change hormonal function. Her prolactin levels started going down, and she gets pregnant. She ended up losing about 30 pounds before she conceived, and her goal was to lose 80 pounds, then get pregnant, and then go from there. But basically, we talked about how sometimes the body doesn't necessarily listen to us in that way. It gets to a state where it feels healthy enough, and it just goes from there. This person, her main goal is not to go out and be a business person. Her main goal was not to go out and change the world, one new car at a time. It was to be a good mom and to be an at-home mom. But she could not perform at the level she wanted to because of the other health stuff that was going on in her life. So we changed some of her lifestyle. And by changing her lifestyle, her body responded appropriately. By changing the way she ate, by changing the way her nervous system worked, whatever, prolactin started going down. She was able to conceive naturally, didn't have to go on medications that cause fatigue, cause weight gain, cause issues, and now she's pregnant. She's ecstatic, blown away, because she was able to get pregnant without having to take the medications. Her OBGYN, I'm assuming it's OBGYN, that told her to take those medications to drop her prolactin, it's like, dude, whatever you're doing is awesome. Do with that, because your prolactin is cut in half from whatever you've done. You still got the tumor, it's still running crazy doing its own thing, but your prolactin was able to drop enough and your body was able to respond appropriately by conceiving, allowing her to perform the level she wanted to in her sphere of the world, which in this situation was a mother. When it comes to us as business people, we can determine what our sphere of influence will be and then where we're lacking from a performance standpoint. Yeah, maybe we have high cholesterol or maybe we can't get pregnant or whatever, but that's irrelevant unless it matters to you specifically. But as a business person who's trying to go out and do the things you need to do, whether it's have more energy or sleep better at night or get up earlier to get the job done or have confrontational management and success by just talking to people and looking at them in the eye, those are physiologic mechanisms that have to occur inside of us. Yeah, some of it's willpower, but some of it is just pure physiology. If we have a lower hypothalamic pituitary adrenal loop, it's a hormonal system that comes from brain to our hormone system to allow cortisol to come up and activity to occur. If that system doesn't work well, there's no way in the world I'll look at somebody in the eye when I talk to them. Because it's too stressful of a response for me physiologically. So I'm like this over in the corner because it's too much to come up and say, hey Ronnie, it's a pleasure for you to see me today. It's too much to do that. But if the physiology is there, I can now perform that action. And so as a doctor of chiropractic, as a quantum neurologist, as an applied clinical nutritionist, I help people get where they need to be, regardless of what it is. And yeah, maybe it's a lot of pain stuff because people, when they see chiropractors, they think pain relief. And yeah, sometimes it's hormonally driven things because I see a lot of women that have hormonal stuff. But that's not always the case for every person. So I look forward to helping anybody out if you have any questions. I'll stay here and answer anything you want for as long as Roy will let me stand up here. If not, if we're like at time to where we need to go, I'll just stay after and talk for a little bit. I scheduled the morning to be here with you guys. So yes, sir.
2 questions. What is a quantum?
Quantum neurologist. So what I specialize in is in functional neurology. So a traditional neurologist looks at MRIs and CT scans and says, you need surgery here, and you should take this medication for this nerve pain or whatever. My goal is to look at people functionally and try and get them to change and improve regardless of their diagnosis.
Okay,
So
what kind of socks do you wear?
these aren't actually socks. These are toe shoes from
I want to take up a donation for shoes. Sometimes you need some shoes. So if y'all don't mind, or patronize this business.
So if you haven't seen these before, they're toe shoes. They have soles on the bottom, and I like them. One of the best things you can do neurologically to stimulate your brain is have improved proprioception. And that's knowing where your body is in space. So as shoes have the hard soles and don't allow your feet to move, it diminishes neurologic feedback from the feet up. And since we're on our feet a lot, I like these. Yes, sir.
Okay, going back to your Coke situation, Coca-Cola.
Yes.
As an example. You were talking about the harmful effects of all the sugar.
Correct.
Now, if you drink a Coke every day, you go buy a Coke every day, from the time you're 22 until the time you're 65, it has just cost you $200,000 on retirement. Just thought I'd let you know, it was run by a competitor, it wasn't run by my carrier.
Thanks for that. Yes, sir.
So, I'm a little confused here about what you're saying the sugar's bad. Give me some examples of fats. When you say your diet's 60% fat, give me foods that are fats.
Eggs, avocados, butter, olive oil, coconut oil, meat.
Any
Most meat. You'll have better options if you eat more grass-fed, like only face ease, meditate cows type thing. But in reality, it's the combination of the proteins with the sugars that starts jacking people up. So if you eat a hamburger without the bread, that's phenomenal food for you. It's got meat, it's got veggies, it's got other stuff. You add the bread to that and your body freaks out because you start food combining inappropriately, and you wouldn't have carbohydrates that need protein breakdown and fat breakdown all at the same time.
You know,
And that's where it becomes more impaired.
my father, when he first found out he was diabetic, they said, go straight to whole wheat bread,
Right.
you know. And that was, and he has diabetes and Alzheimer's.
Right.
But whole wheat bread, like yesterday, Brian and I had sandwiches together. I said, give me whole wheat, you
Right.
know, because I thought I was being healthy.
Well, it's a relative situation. Not everybody benefits from wheat in the same way that other people might. Wheat has good value nutritionally inside of it. But let's do it this way. Is exercise good for us? Is jogging good? Walking good? All right. If I broke everyone's leg in here and said, go jog, would you do it? No, because jogging with a broken leg is an inappropriate activity based off the situation you're in health-wise. Food like wheat also has that same application. For some people, whole wheat is perfectly fine, and they can do perfectly fine with it. For other individuals, they're not in a health state where they can tolerate that food, and it makes them worse. There's a type of diabetes called diabetes type 1.5, and it's adult onset autoimmune diabetes, which is heavily linked to gluten and dairy molecules, gluten and casein. So with those people, if they're an adult and they generate this autoimmune reaction, every time they eat wheat, whether it's whole wheat or refined wheat or whatever, or they eat dairy that has casein inside of it, they get their little Pac-Man cells activated and they start going and munching on their pancreas and creating an autoimmune response. So there's medical research that indicates that, yeah, wheat is okay for some people, then there's other that indicates that wheat will mess you up really bad. And so it's hard to say. So generally speaking, I just tell people, get off of wheat till you can prove otherwise to me that it's okay for you.
That's Jake.
Really important. Some of us like the fermented barley product known as beer.
Right.
Are we far enough down the chain there that we're getting rid of those nasties, or is that a problem?
It depends. It's relative again. But if someone has a gluten reaction, barley, fermented or non, will have gluten within it and it will further aggravate things. For that girl that had the antibodies and thyroid problems, she was asked to go beer-free, bread-free, everything. Now tell that to a 24-year-old college girl, right? Like, hey, you're not getting any beer, by the way. And she's like, whatever, I don't care. I just want to feel good.
How about
So
potatoes?
There is gluten-free beer.
there are gluten-free beers. I don't drink beer, so I don't know what those even taste like. So I don't know. Yes, sir.
Dr. Chase, how do you explain, have you ever heard the term genetic immune? So how do you explain some people, and I'm not going to mention names, but like they eat really bad, and they still in like really good health?
Right. That's just what happens sometimes. Some people are just that way.
The last time I did my life insurance, it was at 50, I qualified for better than I did at 40.
Right.
And I'm not the best, well, when Catherine's around, I'm a pretty good eater. But when she's not here, I don't eat that. Well, I eat good, but it's not healthy.
Right. And to be honest, some people are just that way. So the best thing that I do for people, the best recommendation that I would say is take an honest evaluation of where you really are health-wise. So on my new patient paperwork that I have everybody fill out, there's like 4 pages of nothing but questionnaires on symptoms. And so do something like that where you just assess different systems and be honest with yourself. Because a lot of times guys think of health as pain-free and not with a fever. And I'm not saying you are.
No, I understand.
But
I agree.
we have this mentality of like, man, I don't hurt when I move and I don't have a fever, I'm healthy today. When that's not always the case. If we wake up at night to go to the restroom and you're like, oh, that's weird, I do that like every night, every day of the week. That's a potential symptom because you didn't do it when you were 12. And you didn't do it when you were 25. And now at the age of 40, if you wake up at night to go to the restroom, there's been a symptomatic change even though it's not affecting your ability to throw a baseball.
You're just dying slower.
You just have different symptoms. So take an assessment form or whatever it might be, go through a bunch of systems in your body and see where you rate symptomatically of things that you may not even think about, and then reevaluate as if you're doing okay or not. And if you are, then great, keep doing whatever you're doing.
Well, and just because I qualified at higher, like you said, that doesn't necessarily mean that's good,
Right.
because normal is not always good.
Right.
Well, you don't have to worry.
Not normal. Yeah.
Well, that was a unanimous.
All in favor?
When you talk about inflammation, is it all kinds of inflammation, like arthritic inflammation as well as rheumatoid and circulatory and plaque and all that kind of stuff? I mean, is all part and parcel of inflammation?
All of those have inflammatory mechanisms associated with them, yes, but there are different aspects of inflammation. Inflammation is not a bad thing. We want to have inflammation, because if I dislocate my arm throwing a baseball, and I keep trying to throw that baseball with a dislocated arm, my body should hopefully be able to tell me. And so it'll give me pain and swelling and inflammation and things like that. But it shouldn't be inflamed 6 years later after everything's been put back together. So there's this transitional state where your body has to recognize acute inflammation and overcome it and keep on going. And certain things can cause that to be worse. Inflammation is a broad term that can be broken down to another molecule called cytokines within the blood. And cytokines are just little inflammatory markers that your body will generate in different experiences. So if I twist my arm, cytokines will go up. If I eat gluten and I'm reactive to gluten, cytokines will go up. If I get 6 hours of sleep when I needed 8, cytokines will go up. So we have all these different inflammatory creating things, and the sun can sometimes affect the parts of the body of all those. So when patients come into me because they're in a car wreck and they're, oh, a chiropractor, he sees car wreck people, I will still ask them to go gluten-free and dairy-free for the duration of me working with them. Because if they are sensitive to those things and they're eating them, even though I'm cracking backs and doing whatever chiropractors do, the gluten or the dairy, if they're problematic to it, can still slow down their progress. So it may not be a lifelong thing for them, but in the acute situation, I may still ask them to do dietary things because of the inflammatory responses from there. Yes, ma'am.
I had 2 questions. The main one was whether you have your presentation on YouTube.
I don't, but I'm recording it now and I'll probably put it on YouTube.
Okay, because I'd like to share it. And also, all the questions made me think of my daughter. She recently became a vegetarian, and she's eating a lot of wheat, which I'm severely allergic to, I can't, or whatever, sensitive to. But I'm afraid for her that her diet's becoming wheat and soy. How are those things? She's not eating milk and she's not eating meat. And she's vegan.
She's a vegan then.
She's a vegan.
It depends. Some people can be
She's
vegans
always
and be
been
very
vegan.
good with vegan diets. Some people thrive in that world. Some people don't, though.
Okay.
If we were going to make a list of the top 10 inflammatory foods, I put wheat, dairy, corn, and soy as the top 4.
That's what
Followed by nightshades, which are going to be your tomatoes and potatoes, things like that. Followed by like chocolate, or not
Oh, man.
chocolate itself, just the proteins. It's because of proteins is what it really comes down to. The proteins are what's trigger your inflammatory immune response. So if you're not getting exposure of the proteins, then you're fine. Sugars come up on that list, just refined table sugars on that list. Yeast, bakers and brewers, and eggs come on that list sometimes for some people. That's why you have so many people that get like anaphylaxis or whatever, 2 eggs. And then shellfish would be rounding out the top 10. Probably, if I'm throwing some numbers off the top of my head.
So what can you eat?
And I'm saying,
I was gonna say what.
and that's not to say that everybody needs to get off of those. But if someone walks in and they're just jacked up and they're like, I don't know what to do, I'm like, okay, let's start with the most common ones. Gluten and dairy are probably going to get our biggest bang for our buck. And then after that, let's see how you respond. There are blood tests you can do to try and get an idea. There are some different like genetic testing that you can do to try and figure out which foods are problematic. But generally speaking, gluten and dairy, if someone's having a food reaction, those will probably be the best ones. And if she's vegan, which I have vegan patients that do perfectly fine with it, I would strongly encourage her to be more of an actual vegetarian and not a carbitarian, which is where she just lives off of the pastas and the breads and the crackers and the rice and stuff like that. Because then our sugars just go through the roof and it sets up other issues. She truly needs to eat vegetables if she's going to be a vegetarian, and she'll improve from there a lot of times.
Would you tell us about on processed meat? Like if somebody wanted to go and have Italian hoagie, all that is processed meat?
Right.
How much is that for this?
It's relative. It's relative. Everything's relative. There's always a spectrum of things. So processed and fermented meats aren't necessarily bad in the meat department themselves. It's the other junk that gets added to them that becomes the bigger problem. So, and not even necessarily the condiments or stuff you stick on top. A lot of times, like, if someone is sensitive to gluten and they get some type of preformed meat product, there's gluten inside of there because gluten is used as a glue to hold things together. So even though we talk about beer as being a gluten exposure for things, wine, even though it doesn't sound like it comes from wheat, they'll often line the vats of the wine canisters with gluten because it forms the sugars and the fermentation better than non-gluten containing wines. Gluten is thrown into everything. So whether it's a fermented meat or not, if people are reactive to them, that's when it matters. So it's hard to answer that question in a specific just Italian sausages or not, other than it depends on where they stand from a general health standpoint and if those foods are problematic for them.
Well, I was hungry.
So you ask the question, second, well, what do you eat? And the answer is eat stuff that's not in a package that grows. Whether